Mario, thanks for joining us. Usually I'd start with somebody's sort of journey through business, but in this case I want to start with your sort of journey in Australia, your childhood, your upbringing. Tell us about that.
I came to Australia with my family, 6 sisters and 2 brothers. In 1956, I was 4 years old. We came from a little village in Sicily called Vizzini. When we got here, we lived in Gatehouse Street, opposite the Children's Hospital, for the first year. Then we bought a house on vendor terms, my parents did, in Curzon Street in North Melbourne. And after a couple of years, when I was in grade 3, we moved to Essendon with a big block of land, so my granddad could grow all the vegetables and chickens running around.
Good Italian.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of your earliest childhood memories living in Australia. Were they, enjoyable? Was it difficult sort of fitting into a new culture and that sort of thing? How different was your family to, say, other families in that Australia at the time?
Changing schools wasn't much fun, and it was a bit of a challenge between the customs of the Italians and the Aussies type customs. For example, when your dad tells you off, you're not allowed to look at him in the eyes, and when they tell you off at school, you got to look him in the eyes. So you get belted at school and get belted at home. So it was always the wrong thing, and school wasn't the most exciting place for me to be in, but I did okay.
So you left school, or you finished school, I believe, at the age of 15?
I left school, I finished school at 15, and I became an apprentice motor mechanic.
And why cars? What interested you about that?
Well, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I did like cars. But more importantly, my brother, who's 4 years older than I am, he's a panel beater.
Right.
And he used to take cars home and fix them. And I was always hanging around and watching what he's doing. And I suppose when it came to what am I going to do, I thought, well, he's a mechanic, maybe he's a panel beater, maybe I'll become a mechanic. And that was basically it. I didn't have any particular reason, but that's what I did.
And so you were a mechanic and then got into the buying and selling of cars.
I did my apprenticeship, and what happened was something's happened with me. Most things I don't plan it, they just happen. But I was buying a car when I was about 16, and I was going to do it up for my. So when I turned 18, I had the car. But then my sister said, well, she was 2 years older than I am, and she said, well, why can't I have that car?
She wanted it first.
So I gave it to her, so she paid me what I paid for it and whatever. And then I bought another car, and then my girlfriend's mother said, oh, I love that car. I said, okay. And I said, that's it, I'm not doing that anymore. So I kept on buying cars and selling them, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 a year, and make a little bit of money. And as I got older, and then I actually, when I got to about 18, I was really doing good with it. But my mother insisted I finish my apprenticeship, which I did. And since I finished my apprenticeship at about 19, I've been self-employed ever since.
And so after you sort of buying and selling cars on the side and for family and friends and that sort of thing, you purchased a car yard and started...
Well, what happened there was that my brother, being a panel beater, he had a panel shop, and I used to buy and sell cars, and I was doing quite well, and he was a panel beater, so I'd get him to fix my cars so I could sell them, and he could work hard because he loves working. I didn't. And so what happened there was, after a little while, after I was making so much money, and I was 20 and he's 24, and he says, this is not right, you're making all the money, I'm doing all the work, why don't we go partners? Yeah. So we did. So for the next 2 years, we just had a bit of a machine, buying cars at auctions and fixing them and selling them. And then the laws changed, and so we had to have a licence and a motor car trader's licence. And we said we might as well get a property. So we ended up buying a petrol station in Coburg, in corner of Sydney Road and Gaffney Street in Coburg. And from there, we sort of never looked back because we seemed to be quite natural. He was a hard worker, getting the cars ready. I was pretty good at what I did, buying them and motivating the staff. So we had 1 car yard, 2 car yards, 3 car yards. And being nice little Italian boys, we were taught not to blow our money, so we kept on buying properties.
Good, saving.
Property, yeah. So we bought a property here and a property there, and after about 10 or 12 years of doing that, we owned property all over the place, and we're actually making more money in the property from the uplift of the property value than we had in the cars.
Yep.
And so that happened for a while until I had a bunch of kids, had 3 kids, bought a beautiful house, had everything happening, private schools, the whole works. And I said, what do I need to sell cars for a living? I'll just semi-retired, just do property.
Yep.
So I did that for about 6 months, and it was the most boring time in my whole life. It was just horrible, just doing nothing. And you go and visit your friends. And they were looking at their watches, wanted to work.
Yep.
And I was 38 at the time.
Yep. You had all the time in the world.
Yeah, so I said, bugger this. So I started looking for something to do. What will I do? I didn't want to go back to selling cars or doing car yards. And, when you buy property, it's pretty passive. You buy it, it sits there. You don't do anything. So I was looking in the Financial Review and I noticed an ad for car rental. I said, car rental, that sounds interesting. Long story, I ended up buying it. We only had about 150 old bombs. And out of Preston.
It was Delta?
Delta, yes. It was in Preston, and I did that. And doing what I do, I always try to make things better and easier. And I realised that, in the first couple of months, 5 cars would go in a day. 2 of them would come back on a tow truck. One of them never came back at all, so it wasn't very exciting. So I sort of started progressing into putting a plan in place. I started buying better cars and newer cars and putting the price up. Then I opened up more branches. Then I got a couple of franchisees involved. Anyway, a long story without making it forever is that I was in it for 16 years. We started off with 150 cars. When I sold it, we had 7,000 vehicles, trucks, cars. We're in every state, every airport. We changed the name in 2000 from Delta to Europcar. Right. Europcar is an international brand, and they convinced me that I should become a franchise in the Asia Pacific region, which I did. And we had a lot of things happening, but we bought another company out called National Car Rentals. And we got into every airport all over Australia. And it was going exceptionally well, everything was going good, but then I got an offer I couldn't refuse. And
from Europcar?
Yes,
Yep.
from now it's actually a venture capital, a VC from Malaysia, and they actually bought us, but they were negotiating, buying it on behalf of Europcar sort of thing.
Right, okay.
So they ended up selling it to Europcar, and I got an offer I couldn't refuse, and guess what? I'm retired again. So
you had time up your sleeve, you had money. What did you do next?
We had about 400 staff at the time, and when I walked out, I walked with a piece of paper they called the cheque, and 2 staff members. So we moved into a Franklin Street little office that I had next to Europcar. And we were there, but at that time, before the sale of Europcar, I had been in the property development business, but as a silent partner, I had a partner, and we actually built in Franklin Lofts, and we built the Ansett Tower and developed that, and we developed the Audi showroom, and we did quite a lot of it. But I was passive because I had good cash flow. I had good money coming in, I could afford it, I had good banking credentials and what have you. So we developed a number of properties, but when I sold the business and my partner and I went our separate ways, we'd both done well out of the partnership. We went our separate ways, and I continued to develop on my own. And that's how it started of me being a property developer.
And was property always an interest of yours? Obviously, right the way through, you'd own properties, sold properties. Yes,
I remember because I've always been interested in property, but I've got a long history because being Italian, we don't throw money away, and our parents insist we get to 20 or 21 and you buy a property, and you get the money, they take your money off you and give you an allowance of what you earn, and then when you turn to 20, 21, they help with the deposit, and you buy a little house and you live at home, and that's been a pretty good story. So I was always never buy, my parents, my mum especially, I was never buying a hire purchase, never don't waste money, pay cash, etc. So it's been ingrained to us as children, about property. So there's always been property, and I know what we paid for our first house in Curzon. So we paid about £2,000, and I remember, so I've got a pretty good recollection of property.
And what are some of the learnings, before we go into the next chapter of your life, what are some of the learnings you took away from your time starting Delta and then selling to Europcar that you've used in your next life as a developer?
Okay, well, I could just say to you that being a property developer is a walk in the park compared to being in the car rental business. The car rental business, I pinch myself and ask myself, how did I do that, or how did we do that? Because the people that you rent to. When you've got logistics, you've got smashers, you run an insurance company, you run a logistics company, an IT company, you got a car sales, panel beating, you got cars from Cairns, get them to Queensland, get them to Melbourne, then people, the amount of accidents and parking infringements, speeding infringements and servicing of cars, it's a pretty, coming into property is like retirement village. Nothing happens overnight. It's like a marathon race. You just go slowly. Like to do one of the development like this one here, from start to finish, it's usually about 5 years. So there's plenty of breathing space in between, plenty of time to think, where car rental is lots of staff, lots of accidents, lots of risks, hail damage, and you name it. So it was a pretty tough gig.
And so before you started Salvo Property Group, you partnered with PDG. Tell us about that period.
Well, that was, like I said, that was while I was in the car rental business. Okay. Right. It was in the last 4 or 5 years before I sold, from probably the late 99, 98 or something, to about 204 or 205. Yes, we did joint ventures where I funded or some of a significant portion of it, and my partner at the time managed the everyday operation of the construction. Right.
And now Salvo Property Group, tell us about that.
When Salvo Property Group is, I had a property that was on the corner of City Road and Clarendon Street, which was one of my sites when I was in the Delta and Europcar. And I bought that site for about $300,000 in the early 90s, I think, or middle to early to 90s. And I bought that for about $300,000, and I had an offer 12 or 13 years later, of $3 million. So I said, wow, I can't afford $3 million, a lot of money for that site. So I sold it to a gentleman who got a permit to build a 30-level story building. Unfortunately, that gentleman with a 6-month settlement, well, fortunately for me, but he got a permit, but he didn't settle it. So he lost his deposit, and here I've got a property with a permit for a 30-story building. I said, oh, okay.
This is not bad.
I said, well, I don't know anything about building. I'm not going to do that, because I was focusing on other areas. And I got another offer. This time was for about $3.5 million. And they increased the permit to 33 levels, from 30 levels, and paid their $350,000 deposit, and they didn't settle as well. So now I've got a better property, a property with a bigger permit, and now I'm retired from car rental. I said, well, how hard can this building properties be? So I decided that was my first one on my own. I decided to build on that particular site. So this area, the South Bank area, at the time there was nobody up this end, and it was like a bit barren. And when I rang one of the real estate colliers, the real estate agents, I spoke to their manager. I said, look, I've got this property with a permit. I'd like to start marketing and sell it. And they laughed at me and said, are you for real? That area, that site, so close to the freeway, wasting your time. You wouldn't sell an apartment. You wouldn't do this, you wouldn't do that. And I said, okay, good. So I put my team together, and within 3 months we sold it all out.
Wow.
For significantly more, exactly as we budgeted. So I said, how easy is this, right? And then we bought the adjoining property and the adjoining property and the adjoining property. And in the meantime, everybody's come around to South Bank now. It's going well. We were the first in the area, coming from Clarendon Street towards the city. And all of our sites have gone well, and it's all done exceptionally well. But getting the first one and getting it off the ground. And like I said, things just happen for a reason. They don't just happen. I don't really necessarily plan them. I didn't plan to be a property developer. I didn't plan to be a car rental person. It's just things happen, and if you fall into it and make the most of it. And if you're pretty good at what you do, well, I suppose when I say I'm pretty good at finding the right people that know what they're doing. And what seems to work for us.
And you've done a couple of projects in Southport, up in the Gold Coast, a couple in Sydney, but mainly you've always stuck to South Bank. Why South Bank?
Well, South Bank, I mean, if you're finding gold nuggets in your backyard, why would you go and travel to Ballarat or go to Mexico or where else? I mean, it's been working for us really well. We know the area, our customers know us, we've got local builders we work with, so it's just, why travel when it's there? So I don't understand why we've done it, but it's more difficult. Flying there, inspecting, meeting consultants, etc. So if we needed to, my parents came to Australia because there was no opportunities in our village. Otherwise, they would still be there, and I would travel interstate or anywhere if I didn't have the opportunities here. And we have great opportunities in Melbourne, so that's the reason we don't travel, we don't need to.
And over your career, you've done hundreds of deals. What do you think are the three, 2 or 3 fundamentals to every deal that you've done?
You have to seize the opportunity. So I say to people ask me, another way I put it, they ask me about the success or why I've been successful. And I say that my view is that you need a balance, probably about 33% of common sense or brains, not academic brains, just common sense brains. Common sense, then you also need balls and determination. So if you put those 3 together, there's opportunities pass people by, but they just don't seize it on. They're not prepared to take the risk, or they're not prepared to work hard enough. All of them. But if you've got the common sense approach, and you've got the determination to make it work, common sense or brains to evaluate the situation, then the determination. Then you're prepared to mortgage your house or take the risk, right? To get the funding, whatever. Well, then that's the formula as far as I'm concerned, because a lot of people have opportunities, but they're too scared, or they don't take them up because they don't think, or other people have the opportunities, but they're too lazy and they just think it's going to happen.
And is that something you've instilled? I know a couple of the family members, sons and daughters work in the business. Is that something you've sort of instilled in them as well?
Well, I think so, because growing up, I'm not sure if I planned it that way, but they see Dad, and they say they've worked in the business. My older children, they were a part of the journey in Europcar, and they all worked part-time when they were younger, and all of them, the 3 older ones, have probably worked an average of 10 years each with me in the car, and they see how it works, and they've picked it up, and I think they've got the determination, and of that they got all the assets, I suppose, that you require.
Mario, I'm interested to know, how do you stay active during periods of weaker markets like in 2008 with the GFC, or more recently?
Well, all I can say is that I've been in business for over 47 years, probably 50 years, right? And in that time, we've seen GFCs, we've seen global financial markets, we've seen all sorts of things, and I can tell you, I've never felt any of them. I've been successful all the way through, because when it is times of adversity, there's opportunities, great opportunities. So, for example, when I was in the car and truck rental business and budget credit card went broke, well, I was able to buy sites off them for a song, right, and buy their trucks and cars for half the price what they paid for them. So then I could rent them out for less than I could, so I was more competitive. So I see that as an opportunity. Now, if it's tougher, and while I seem to be in a position at this point in time that we're financially much better off than I was in the budget days, so if you can buy, it's all about buying. If you buy the sites at the right price, you can pass on the savings to the purchaser. So the P who has the lowest overheads is most competitive, will always survive or prosper in a weaker market. So I'm not ever concerned about if it's tough. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. It's always been my motto, and it still is. So I see when it's boom times, we'll do well. When it's bad times, we might even do better.
And what's your view at the moment? And what's your take on the market at the moment?
Well, we've got one under construction, one started launching, and we're selling quite well. But like again, it's always about being competitive. And now I've always got the view is that whether it's a cafe or a restaurant or car rental, it's all the same philosophy. If you can give the customer more for the same price everybody else is charging, well, you're going to get the business. And if you can give it for the same, if you can charge them less, for the same product everybody else is giving, you still got to be in business and win-win. It's always about being competitive, and everything is in the buying, the cost of goods sold. If you can focus on the cost of goods sold, so we don't go and buy 10 sites a year, we might buy one a year. Or, because it takes 5 years. So if you buy one a year, you've got 15 years, you've got plenty of stock. You understand?
Yeah.
So it's basically about you don't just go bang, bang and buy everything. You look at 100 and buy one. Look at 100 and buy one. And if you're that so competitive, you'll be fine.
We're in a beautiful Salvo building right now. What are some of the characteristics of all Salvo buildings right along South Bank or wherever it may be?
Well, obviously we find beautiful. Look at this site. It's on a corner. It's got amazing views. It's high, and what we do is when it's a large enough building, we don't do 20 or 30 because you can't give the economies of scale to provide beautiful facilities, amazing pools, amazing gymnasium, great views, amazing facilities, fast lifts. So some builders will go along and put the slowest lifts and put the scunchiest pool. So we like to put all the amenities in, so everybody has a great. So when they come here, they look at it, and they look at the display, or they come through here, and we've got the best price. We're competitively priced. We've got amazing, good quality. We use the best builders. We use the best lawyers. We use the best engineers. So we just tick all the boxes. And the main part is to design a beautiful building that isn't overly expensive. You don't have to spend a lot of wasted money on the things you don't get any value for. So it's a value. We're looking at value, and I believe every business I've ever been to or operated, it's about value for the customer.
So Mario, was there anybody that you looked up to as a mentor or that you mentored over the years as well?
Don't mentor anybody in particular. People ask me, if people ring me or ask me about things, I'll answer the questions, I'll assist them if it were possible. Right, but I don't really never had a mentor that someone that's mentored me. The only person that I could say has had a great influence on the direction I've gone to, and not that he purposely did that, but I envied or I admired, is my oldest brother, who is Dominic, who's 18 years older than I am, and I was in awe of him because he had a car and we didn't, and he had a business like a milk bar and we didn't, and he had a cafe and he did, so he was like to me, wow. So that's about the only person I could say that has you could say, I wouldn't say mentored me, but for his determination, his hard work, and he always had a go. And he was the person that came to Australia before we all came. My oldest brother, he was set the path. He came. He said, "I'm getting out of this little village." Came to Australia, and lucky for me, and lucky for my family, for all of us, that we're in this beautiful Melbourne, best country in the world.
Where to from here?
I have 3 younger children. I'd like to obviously guide them along in their. I've got 3 older ones that are pretty well set in there. They're already the way. I've got 3 younger kids. I'd like to see them through and make sure that they become good, honest citizens. Obviously, looking after health, because looking after yourself physically and mentally. And I don't really ever think of the word retirement. I'll never retire, because if you retire, you'll be bored to death. So I like to keep I've got a very good team. I've got a really good team of young guys, young people working, and they basically drive the business. I coach them only a little bit. I used to coach them a lot, but now they coach me. So I just I love being in business. I love meeting the people. I love opportunities. I love meeting you today and talking today. And so no, it's all a bit of fun. Retirement doesn't enter my. I like to manage people who run my business or businesses and help them in their journey. I love seeing the young people develop, and I think that in my career, I think that I've been told by many people that they learned a lot from me and working with me, and so I love to see them develop and be successful and be good, honest citizens.
Well, Mario, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.